Hello, friends and listeners. Welcome to Truth, Lies, and Alibis, the true crime podcast from three friends sharing their perspectives from having years of 911 dispatching experience.
Episode 10, As Long as You Love Me. Today, we talk about the recent prison break of Casey White and the 1994 prison break of Randolph Dial.
We are here today without Kylee because she couldn't make it, so we'll miss her, but you're just going to hear from the two of us tonight.
Yeah.
My question to start off today is, have you guys ever taken a call, have you ever taken a call for an escaped inmate or had to dispatch an ATL for an escaped inmate?
I for sure have had ATLs before. Nothing, so the agency where you worked for, the jail was like connected to the building. So I didn't have often ATLs come out that the deputies weren't aware of before me, because inevitably if a situation like that occurred, somebody was already calling somebody else's cell phone and be like, hey, this person is missing. And if that ever did happen, it was like a furloughed subject, somebody that was on work release that didn't return when they were supposed to.
Yeah.
However, I was working one day where there was a guy, I don't remember how it happened, but he escaped custody, and the parking lot that was with our station, it's a gated parking lot, but like if you make it to the front gates, it's easy enough to slip through because they're made for cars, not people. But we did have the jail call over, and this was actually another circumstance where the sergeant knew before I did anyway, but they called over to let us know that one of the inmates was like in the parking lot somewhere. He had like escaped custody and was hiding around the cars and trying to get out of the parking lot, but they had like deputies and detention officers and police officers like in the area immediately because it's the same building essentially. So it didn't last very long.
I was gonna say, did they find him?
Yeah, they did. He was quickly located.
Well, that's good. Could you imagine walking out to your car? They'd have to escort people or something.
Yes. Yeah, there were talks of it, but it was like it wasn't even like 15 minutes.
What an idiot.
And the fact that like he didn't make it out of the parking lot when
the gate is so easy.
Yeah, or yeah.
That's funny.
I think he was probably just like, okay, I'm not in custody anymore. What do I do?
He was probably like, I didn't think I'd get this far.
Yeah, that worked. Yeah.
I know I had to dispatch an ATL. I think it was like, it's a town like 3 hours away from us, but there was like 2 escaped inmates or something. I still remember that they had the signs up that said escaped inmate or whatever, because I remember this meme where it was like, look at the sunset, and it had the sign up that said escaped inmate ATL for and I laughed. I mean they found him eventually, but I laughed so hard at that because I was like, oh god, of course someone would post something like this. But I remember we had to, for DPS, we have to put out an ATL every like so many minutes when stuff like that happens. So like for the first couple hours it's like every, I don't know, 15, 30 minutes or something. And then the next couple hours, it's like every hour. And then it's once every shift until they like find them. So
it has to be aired that often or just like sent out?
Yeah, it has to be aired. We have to air it on the radio. Yeah. So I remember that. I'm going to tell you today, have you heard about the case of Casey White and Vicky White? Recently, it's been on the news.
I admittedly don't pay attention to the news often because
it's sad.
Yeah, my mental health is a battle just with my own brain, and I don't need to add a lot of depressing news on top of everything. So I am aware of the kind of overview of it. I don't know a lot of the details, though.
I mean, a lot of the details have been released, but a lot of them still are, under wraps because they just found them. But I'm going to tell you some of the stuff because I started working on the research for this story before they were even caught, because I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then they were caught. So I'm going to tell you some of the stuff I found out before and then some of the stuff that they found out since.
Okay.
On Friday, May 27th, an Alabama inmate escaped, and there was a nationwide manhunt underway for the inmate. His name is Casey Cole White and Vicky White. Vicky White is the deputy who possibly helped him escape, which we know now did help him escape. Casey White was a 39-year-old male being held on murder charges for the 2015 murder of Connie Jane Ridgway. Connie was the victim of a murder for hire scheme, and White confessed to murdering her, but there's no clear motive for her murder. I tried to look more into the background for that to see if there was much of a story, but there's not a lot of information. I'm hoping because of all of this, there will be more that comes out. He also hasn't been sentenced for her murder, so that might be a reason, like, he hasn't gone to trial.
Still, like, open. Yeah.
Yeah. So Austin Williams is the son of Connie, and he was notified by authorities that his mother's killer had escaped and said he hopes that he turns himself in. He said that he was completely shocked that his mother's killer could be loose, and according to the Daily Mail, friends said that Connie was known for her friendliness and willingness to help others. He confessed to the murder while incarcerated for multiple charges related to a crime spree that took place through Tennessee to Alabama. One night, he staged a home invasion along with 2 carjackings and multiple shootings that injured a woman and killed a dog. The night ended with a stolen car stuck in the field after a high-speed chase. White exited the vehicle and threatened to shoot officers as well as himself. Officers pleaded with White to put his gun down and to give himself up. And after this ordeal, Casey was found guilty of 9 charges in total, including trying to kill his ex-girlfriend and kidnapping 2 of her roommates. Other charges included first-degree burglary, third-degree burglary, breaking and entering a vehicle, animal cruelty for shooting the dog, and attempting to elude. For these crimes alone, he was sentenced to 75 years in prison. It was after this that he wrote to Lauderdale County and requested to speak to the sheriff's office, and he confessed to killing Ridgway and was able to provide a detailed description of the scene. In October of 2020, Casey White appeared for arraignment on the murder charge and requested to be held in Lauderdale County Jail instead of going back to prison, but his request was denied because they found out that he was planning on escaping the county jail. In the showers of the county jail, they had discovered a makeshift knife that they suspected he was intending to use to force someone to let him out. This leads us to the escape on Friday, April 29th, when Casey was being transported by Vicky White, who, you know, we have to say they're not related.
Okay, I was going to ask.
Yeah, because when I first saw that, I was like, are they related in some way? Like, and how is this not caught?
Yeah.
I know White's a common last name, probably, but I was like, they've got to be related. And then it turned out they weren't related. At 9:30, she transported him to a court appearance, and then they vanished. So it came out later that she had said that he had to go to some kind of, I think it was like a mental health evaluation.
Okay.
And turns out there was no mental health evaluation scheduled. So the whole reason she took him out of court was a lie.
So she transported him to court and then they left the courthouse.
Correct. And I'll get to it, but the sheriff basically says there's rules against an inmate being alone with an employee. So she went against policy on that as well. The marked vehicle that the two had left in was discovered in the parking lot in Florence, Alabama at 11 o'clock on Friday, but the disappearance of the 2 subjects was not discovered until 15:30 that day. The sheriff of Lauderdale County, Rick Singleton, spoke to the press right when all this was happening and developing, and he said, "We're still aggressively investigating, trying to find out what happened and find the location of Deputy White and inmate White. And knowing the inmate, I think she's in danger, whatever the circumstances. He was in jail for capital murder and he had nothing to lose." So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Vicky White, and it sounds like from the beginning they didn't think that she had anything to do with it, which I don't entirely understand. Maybe they thought she was being threatened or was scared for some reason, but the more I read about like what she had done before, I was like, this is all too weird. She had been an employee with the sheriff's office for 25 years, and she told her subordinates that she was taking Casey for the mental health evaluation. She also said she was feeling under the weather and would be stopping for medical attention herself, which I thought was a weird detail to supply them. Also, are you going to take him to the doctor with you?
Yeah, is he coming?
It's so weird.
Don't mind this guy in the corner. I just have to keep an eye on him.
He's just an inmate. But I
What,
thought I'd
for
bring
murder,
him.
just, you know.
We go out like this all the time.
We're pretty low staffed, so I have to bring him with me.
I mean, they might believe that. According to investigators, Casey never made it to the courthouse, and there was no evaluation, even scheduled, like I said. Singleton also said that the traveling alone with the inmate was a strict violation of department policy, but that she may not have been questioned because of her seniority. So since she was so high up, they were like, oh, okay.
Did she have rank or just seniority?
I think she just had seniority, but she'd been there a long time. I think she was a supervisor of some sort too. The sheriff had been adamant in saying he doesn't know for sure whether she aided in his escape or is in danger until May 2nd, when a warrant was issued for her arrest related to helping the inmate escape. However, the deputy did turn in her paperwork for retirement the day before they went missing, and the clear violation of the policy made me wonder. She also had recently sold her house and had been living with her mother for 5 weeks prior, but had not mentioned retirement to her mom or the inmate. She had no children and she was a widow. I just think it's interesting that she's like selling her house and no one's like, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah. It doesn't sound like anybody knew. So it was obviously not something that, like, that's a big deal. That's something you're like, oh yeah, I'm working on selling my house, and that's a discussion point. So
yeah,
for her to kind of keep it a secret and then be living with her mom, but then yeah,
it's
definitely
just
suspicious.
Weird that her mom wasn't like, hey, what is your plan? Because
Yeah.
I feel like my mom, I mean, if we talked, I feel like my mom would be like, what are you doing? You know,
Yeah.
like, you're a grown woman living with your mom. Is this how you want to live your life? Like,
my mom would be
would your mom be
my
happy?
mom would be over the moon. She'd be like, what do you want for dinner? Set your laundry aside. I'll do your laundry this weekend.
Like I told you, I want my mom to be my mom. On May 3rd, Singleton told CNN that the two had a special relationship according to other prisoners. So I guess they did like an investigation. Obviously, another agency came in and did it, and they learned that she had been giving him more food. They just had a weird relationship going on. On May 5th, additional pictures of the vehicle and the two were shared on the news, and a truck driver who had towed the vehicle nearly a week before called his boss and alerted Williamson County Sheriff's Office of the possible connection, and they confirmed it was the vehicle.
You said it was a marked vehicle, right?
No, she I think this was like an SUV. It was like an orange SUV that they had.
Oh.
So they had this was all, I don't know how, and I wonder if they had more help. Because she had left a vehicle at the courthouse. They got out of their vehicle, the marked vehicle, and left the marked vehicle there. And they left in a different vehicle. And I think the ATL out was for like an orange SUV of some sort.
Okay.
And then I guess it had been towed because it was like an abandoned vehicle or something. And then on May 6th, and from there they must have gotten into another vehicle. And that was an F-150. They eventually found out. They had like video of the area and they saw someone who looked like him getting into an F-150. So on May 6th, another warrant was issued accusing her of forgery and identity theft related to her using an alias. Oh, she purchased the Ford Edge, the orange Ford Edge that they used to escape.
Oh, okay.
Then on May 9th, U.S. Marshals released images from May 3rd showing Casey White in a Ford F-150, and then he left the vehicle and got into a Cadillac in Indiana. And an Evansville police officer spotted the vehicle at a Motel 41, which I didn't know that was the thing. Maybe it's
I feel like
than
anything
the Motel 6.
Motel 6 or Hotel 8.
Anything with a number?
Any number. I don't know. Just pick a number at this point.
So an officer spotted the Cadillac and alerted others, and while they were doing surveillance at the motel, they witnessed Vicky and Casey leaving the motel, and then they began to pursue the vehicle. They got into a pursuit, and the two drove into a grassy field in a parking lot, and the officers rammed the car, and it flipped onto its side into a ditch, which is funny because in his first pursuit, he also went into a grassy area, and I'm like, did you not learn your lesson the first time?
Nope.
You know what I mean? And I guess there's body cam footage, which I'll try to find and share on our social media of the first pursuit. And then there's obviously body cam footage of this pursuit. But when they reached the vehicle, they found that Vicky White had shot herself in the head, and they took Casey into custody. And Casey referred to Vicky as his wife and said he didn't shoot her. The coroner ruled her death a suicide, and investigators found 4 handguns, a semi-automatic rifle, 3 magazines, wigs, and about $29,000 in cash in the vehicle. So they definitely planned this. That's a lot of money. And I'm guessing she got a lot of that money from her house.
From selling her house?
Yes, from selling her house and moving in with her mom, who doesn't ask questions, apparently. But during the pursuit, I guess a 911 call was placed by Vicky White, and I'm going to send it to you, Jess. We can play some of it, but it's just interesting because there's not really a lot said. You can just kind of hear her yelling. And I'm like, did she...
Why is she...
call 911? Or...
Yeah.
Did she... Like, was it a butt dial?
And that's very coincidental to accidentally call 911 while you're in a police pursuit.
Yeah, and so we don't have to listen to the whole thing. You can, like, kind of just hear, like, the beginning.
Amazon Island. 911.
Please stop. They're going to airbags going to walk and kill us.
Hello?
John. Airbags are going on. Let's get out and run. Get us back to the hotel.
Hello?
Did this 911 call go to the same center that was dispatching for the pursuit? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe it was the same center who was dispatching for the pursuit. And then the rest is just literally the pursuit.
An open line.
And I think at the end, I don't know if they have it on this call, you can hear the cops talking at the end of it. I just thought it was interesting because I was like, did she accidentally call 911? Or, like, why would you call 911 when you're in a pursuit? And then my thought is, like, I think she probably had thought about getting caught and had probably thought, if we get caught, about what she would do. But it's just weird because she called 911, then he's like, I didn't shoot her. It's just weird. But it was obviously a suicide because they ruled it a suicide.
Yeah. Do they know if that was before the vehicle crashed?
Yeah, it was before the vehicle crashed. It was while they were in a pursuit.
And because I only listened to that like first 30 seconds or so. I know you listened to more of it. Can you hear her talk anymore in it? Because I listened to the first minute. And so the first 30 seconds you can kind of hear talking. And then for the 30 seconds after that, you can just hear sirens.
Actually, maybe it happened right as they crashed or right after they crashed, because she says the fucking airbags went off, let's get out, or something like that.
Yeah, because she definitely says his name, and then she says that I heard her say airbags are either going to go off or did go off. I'd have to listen to it again to figure out what she says, but she doesn't sound
Suicidal?
as panicked. Yeah, like, It is weird because if she was at that point where it was so regretful and she didn't want to get caught, you think that it would sound more desperate.
Yeah,
and it's kind
true.
of just like,
she's just kind of saying something.
It's almost like she's just complaining about how reckless he's driving, right? Like, it's almost like you're going to set off the airbags, like the airbags are going to go off. Like, it doesn't sound, which kind of goes against the fact that there was a 911 call at all. Mm-hmm. Again, I find it very hard to believe coincidences like that I don't feel like just happen.
Yeah.
To be involved in a pursuit in which you're running from officers and you accidentally call 911. Yeah. Like, I don't think that just accidentally happens.
Well, I've heard of 911 calls in pursuits, but that was for, like, people who were, this girl who was kidnapped. Like, there was this one story where she called 911 and then, or like OJ when he called 911 when he was in his pursuit. But she didn't say anything, really.
Right.
Like, there was no real, like you said, there's no, like, fear or I don't know. It was weird. And then I thought, well, maybe it was like an OnStar call, because sometimes, like, I don't know.
Oh, if it crashed.
Yeah, if it was transferred. But usually when that happens, they'll say, this is OnStar. We have at this location or something.
That's true.
At least that's been my experience when I've taken OnStar calls.
Mm-hmm.
So at first I thought, oh, maybe it was that. But it's just strange. But then when you think of all the stuff adding up, right? Like, she definitely helped plan this. There definitely was some planning that went into this. There definitely was some kind of inappropriate relationship, because I have on here, there's been multiple stories that reported there was an inappropriate relationship between the two of them from the first time White had been incarcerated at the facility. So I guess they had met previously when he was incarcerated, and then they continued to like send messages to each other. Like they continued to keep up communication. So I think it's safe to say that the two were planning it for a while, and that it sounds like, I mean, he called her his wife. So it sounds like she gave up her entire life for what she thought was love, right? With this inmate who I'm sure she was aware of his past, but what made her so... Like, and I don't know hers, but I'm guessing there had to be some kind of vulnerability that led to him being able to get her to agree to this. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it happens. It happens all the time. I have another story I'll tell you about, and it's just interesting. So Casey told police that it had been their plan to have a shootout with police because he didn't want to go back to jail. And in the investigation, investigators learned that the two had been staying at the motel to lay low, and they kind of thought that they had put enough distance in between them. And I mean, they had wigs and stuff to change their appearance, and they had paid for the hotel room for a 14-day stay. So however far they were, they felt safe enough to stop, but obviously that kind of led to their downfall. White returned to Alabama after waiving his extradition hearing. There have been the multiple stories about them having an inappropriate relationship, and I can't find a lot more about the murder charges, but I'm going to look into the story more as it progresses, and hopefully more will come out. Since the news of the couple being found, investigators have announced that they are also reopening the investigation of White's ex-girlfriend's death. In February of 2008, investigators ruled that Christy Lynn Shelton McKee had committed suicide. White and McKee had been dating for about a year, and McKee was staying in White's trailer when she was found with a gunshot wound to the chest. McKee was a 31-year-old mother who had previously lost custody of her children and suffered from drug addiction. They ruled her death a suicide, which to me is red flag. Who shoots himself in the stomach? Yeah. I don't think that's often a way people who are planning that would kill themselves. Also, it could take a while to bleed out, I would think, depending on what they hit, you know? Yeah. Or what kind of gun they used, or...
Well, and statistically, women go for the less messier suicide
overdose.
They poison or... Yeah. Which is... That's no point saying that doesn't happen.
Well, it's just weird because you would think they would have looked into it, too, after he tried to kill his other girlfriend. Yeah. He was arrested later, obviously, for attempting to murder his other girlfriend and then kidnapping her roommates. So obviously he's not very stable. It's just things that would make you be like, well, I have this guy here who was going to kill his girlfriend, and his ex-girlfriend died of suicide, but she shot herself in the stomach. And it makes me wonder, too, like, hopefully there'll be more stuff that comes out later about the investigation into her death. Like, what happened to make them rule that a suicide would be interesting to know. Yeah. And that seems to be his MO, right? He preyed on her. Then he obviously, in some way, preyed on Vicky. She had to have been vulnerable in some way, I would think, to risk everything she had for this person.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll never get the answers, right? Because Vicky's no longer with us. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't feel... He was detained easily, or did he shoot at police officers? How was he detained?
This time, I think he was injured and maybe like kind of in shock that she had shot herself. But I think that's how they got him so easily, because they were planning on doing a shootout, or like he was planning on a shootout is what he said. But also going back to that first pursuit that he got in, he also was like threatening police but didn't do anything, obviously, and they were able to talk him out of doing anything. So maybe he's just saying that for show, talking himself up.
That definitely happens quite often.
There's also like reports that they had inappropriate phone calls between them while he was in jail, which I'm also like, well, how did they not know? It said recorded jailhouse phone calls between Vicky White and Casey helped to prove that she was having that inappropriate relationship before they left. And then I'm looking at this Yahoo report, and it says Lauderdale County Sheriff Rick Singleton said, "You think you know someone, and it turns out you really don't know them at all." So he was the one who from the beginning was like, oh, I think she's in danger. I'm sure he feels like she kind of fooled him. There's also like statements made by her former mother-in-law, because she's a widow, you know, she said she can't understand why the really nice person she knew for almost her entire life would go on the wrong with an inmate and then do what she did. They said it just makes you sick knowing that the 56-year-old corrections officer who was once married to her son, the mother-in-law's son, wound up in the center of a well-planned prison escape. So the person that he had stabbed to death was a 50-year-old mother of 2. So it's like, it's all just so weird. The whole thing is really weird to me. It's
I wish all the Vicky stuff made more sense to me.
I just wonder what made her be like, hey, you know what? You're right. I'm going to sell my house and give up my career and we're going to go on the run. And I mean, I know people do crazy stuff for love, but you have to know going into that job the kind of people that you're going to be working with.
Well, and she was there for 25 years, so she knew.
Yeah. How did this one inmate get her to risk everything? I keep asking that. I'm like, it's just odd.
Yeah, I wish we're never going to, but I wish we could get answers because like I said, the 911 call and then leading to the suicide. So was she experiencing some sort of regret and she didn't want there to be a police shootout? But if that's the case and you called 911 to
say that
or do the thing where if he doesn't know, you do the thing where you get them to talk and give information by having a conversation with them.
Yeah.
So like, are you really going to shoot these officers? Like,
yeah. So that
what's your plan? Yes. Yeah. There's not there. It's just the open line, which I guess is why people think it was an accident. But I don't buy the coincidence of that. Or unless, well, I mean, Apple iWatch, whatever, does it all the time. So I guess it could happen.
Yeah. Maybe it was her Apple Watch.
Yeah. But it's just, there's
too many coincidences.
I didn't hear the panic in her voice that would lead to a suicide. She almost sounded more like angry than distraught.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe she had a plan, but
maybe
she had to have known there's a possibility we'll get caught.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, like,
I mean,
nowadays,
Bonnie and Clyde got caught eventually.
Yeah, and that was way back in the day, though, where there wasn't cameras and cell phones and credit cards, and there wasn't the media so much that your face is plastered all over every television, every Facebook, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bonnie and Clyde had it good back then, you know? Also, they weren't, like, on the run supposedly trying to help poor people. They were just on the run for love, like Romeo and Juliet in some way. Like, it was weird, you know? And I don't know, maybe she was lonely and sad because she was a widow. And I mean, I could understand that, but try like Christian Mingle or something.
Oh, God. Or what is it? Farmers only or something. Or you have to take up agriculture first. But
what's that? Our Time for old people. Or older, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 50's not that old.
It's not really when you think about it. But they have specific dating sites for people.
For whatever your thing is.
They also have dating sites for inmates. So I don't know. Maybe that's just what she wanted. Who knows, okay?
Who knows?
Like you said, we're never gonna know.
No.
So I wanted to kind of like tell you a little bit about another similar story. Bobby Parker was a school teacher and was the wife of Deputy Warden Randy Parker. On August 30th, 1994, Bobby and Randy had breakfast with their daughters, and then Randy went to work. He came home for lunch to an empty house. A note was left by Bobby saying she had gone shopping and she had left a sandwich in the fridge for him. At 4:45, Randy, who had returned to work thinking everything was fine, received a call from his oldest daughter stating that Bobby never came home. He was worried something had happened to her and called the local hospitals, but there was no sign of her. Bobby Parker would be missing for 11 years. So would the convicted killer who went missing with her. Bobby and her husband Randy had married in 1982, and they had 2 little girls. Bobby and Randy worked at the same prison. Bobby was a teacher for inmates with special needs, and Randy worked as a correction officer. So Randolph Dial was an inmate in the Oklahoma State Reformatory. So that's where they had worked together, and Randy was still working there. So Randolph Dial was a convicted murderer. Bobby and Randolph began spending more time together when she helped him sell his ceramics. So I watched this Dateline episode. It was very weird. Apparently the warden thought it would be good because he was an artist to sell his art, and it would make the
I feel like that happens a lot.
Yeah, and it would make the prison look good and blah, blah, blah. So apparently they set up like an art studio at Bobby's home, and he would come there. yeah, this is all weird.
That doesn't happen a lot.
He's a murderer, and we're like, oh, let's just let him go to this house and make some ceramics. So he would come there, and I guess he had started to like teach her. The two often spent time.
I can only picture the movie Ghost.
I was gonna say, are you thinking of Ghost right now? Because that's what I thought of too, except with a murderer. Let's make a musical out of that. So it says the two often spent time alone together in the Parker's garage. That's where the ceramics studio was. And apparently Dial started to develop feelings for Bobby. And after a few weeks, Randy thought that Dial was spending too much time in the Parker home. And he told Dial to back off of Bobby because he thought it just seemed kind of inappropriate. So on August 30th, that's the day that she went missing. And like after he contacted the hospitals and stuff, he realized, oh, you know how I haven't seen this afternoon? I haven't seen Dial. So he asked an officer to check Dial's cell, and that's when they discovered that he was also missing. So Randy feared that he had escaped and had abducted Bobby in the process.
How long was this guy missing and the jail didn't know?
They don't know. Because the last time she was seen was before her husband went to work. Or after she dropped the kids off or whatever. But it's still a pretty long period of time that she's MIA. In the Dateline episode that I watched, she told the story of her abduction, and she says that she must have been slipped some kind of medication that made her pass out. However, in that same story, she says she wakes up driving somewhere in Texas while Dial was hiding on the floorboard of the vehicle. I don't know how much is true because I guess in the investigation, they also learned that Dial had been trying to barter for Valium on the prison black market. So maybe he did, but how would she have been driving then? And I guess he had made several comments about Bobby saying that he was in love with her. And in the investigation had found no evidence to show at the time, evidence to show that she had voluntarily left with him or that she had any kind of feelings for him, right? So the evening of her disappearance, Bobby called her mother and told her to call Randy and the children and tell them that she loved them, and then she hung up, which is weird to me that she called her mom and not her husband. The next day, she called her best friend and told her the same thing. And 24 hours after that phone call to her best friend, Bobby's van was found abandoned just over the Texas border. Bobby's last phone call was to her brother's wife 10 days after her disappearance. She sounded upset and asked her sister-in-law to tell her daughters that she loved him and everything that would be okay. She'd placed a total of 3 phone calls, and then no one heard from her for 11 years. In April of 2005, Randolph Dial was arrested in East Texas after a tip had been called into America's Most Wanted, because I guess they had aired the story on the show. I love that show. And then Bobby Parker was found also working on the same chicken ranch Randolph was arrested at. So they had been living this entire time as a married couple. He returned to prison and Bobby was reunited with her husband and daughters because she said that she had been held against her will. She said she was afraid to leave. She said that for her family, she was scared to leave. But then she soon after was charged with helping him escape, and investigators alleged that Bobby and Randolph were romantically involved. Warden Jack Kylee, who had been the boss of Bobby's husband at the time of the disappearance, thought that from almost the beginning he was convinced that Bobby had been involved in the disappearance willingly. He alleged that he had seen them having a drink at her house together and they seemed to be too close. He was also suspicious that Bobby had not called her husband after being kidnapped, and he testified in trial. However, it was revealed in his interview with Dateline that he had received 2 tips in the 11 years about where Randolph and Bobby were, but he didn't report it to the FBI. He told Dateline he was content with knowing that he wasn't committing any crimes and he was out living his life.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
He was super sarcastic and said maybe it was his fault that she wasn't found sooner. And I'm like, yeah. Maybe it was.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Did those people who called the tips in to America's Most Wanted also call the tips in to you and you just sat on them and did nothing?
Didn't do anything? Yeah, that's not how... Oh, you know what? Well, it's okay, because he's not killing anybody right now.
Yeah, but he's killed someone before.
Oh, I know.
So Dial died in 2007 after a lengthy illness in Oklahoma at the age of 62, but her trial on the escape charges began July 5th of 2011. Apparently, they had asked Dial if she was involved, and he had just said no. He said he took her, and she didn't willingly want to go, and, but who knows how much that's true, because he is a convicted murderer and they were found like living happily together. He told her, I guess he also admitted that he told her he would harm her family if she tried to leave. Again, we don't know how much that is true. What I do know is they found photos, emails, handwritten letters, and condoms in Bobby and Dial's trailer that indicated they were a willing couple. They also claimed that she had previously had intimate contact with other prison inmates. However, this was later proved to be wrong. And the district attorney in her case thought there were multiple times that she could have reached out for help and she chose not to. It came out that he at one point did have a heart attack and she had wrote him like a love letter. Like they found the love letter saying how much she loved him and wanted to be with him. And he was in the hospital. So that's another time when she could have left. But chose not to. In the Dateline interview, they said that she did not testify at her own trial because she wasn't willing, like wasn't in a good place to do it at the time, but she was in a good place when she did the Dateline interview, I guess. And the Dateline interviewer asked her if she had helped him escape or lived with him in a romantic way, and she answered no to all the questions. She was found guilty, and she did serve 6 months of a 1-year sentence and then was released, and she moved back in with her husband and continues to maintain that she did not help him escape. And they are, as far as I know, everything I've seen, still married, and he completely believes her, completely supports her. I don't know if that's because of how much he loves her or how much he just doesn't want to think, but 11 years is a long time.
Yeah, my thing on that is to, like, maybe it was an abduction to begin with, and he did make whatever their relationship was beforehand to her, it obviously meant something to him. And there was that mentality of, if I can't have you, then nobody can. And if you tell your husband or your family, then I'll kill them or whatever. So that's why she reached out to people that could talk to her husband instead of reaching out to the husband. And then, playing into that long enough that it becomes some sort of twisted, like, Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Beauty and the Beast.
Yep, because that's not a healthy relationship. But, over time, you just accept your reality as what it is.
Yeah.
And so when she does have the opportunities to, when he is in the hospital or something like that, like whether it be fear or dedication at that point, like, sure, I could leave now and head home, but is he going to come find me afterwards? I don't know. There's I could see it being both ways. Yeah.
It's just, I guess it could be that way because, right, like you're saying with Stockholm Syndrome, you can, like, eventually that becomes your reality and, like, you're telling yourself you do love him. And I guess there were a couple people interviewed in the Dateline episode that did say that they thought he was abusive towards her. So, like, a previous boss at some chicken farm that they had worked at, they thought he was abusive and there was just some, like, weird stuff going on. But apparently he was, like, well known in the area they lived in, too. Like, he continued to make his pottery and even was asked to speak at, like, some women's event or something.
Was he under the same name?
No, they used different names.
Okay.
And then he had ads on the radio or something, too, which is weird. And there was an author who had written a book about him, and one night he thought it would be funny to call him, and they called him and talked to him, I guess, because this author was on the Dateline interview, and she told him she was happy and she loved him, which is weird. But maybe he made her. I don't know.
Again, at that point, I'm not saying that she never loved him. I think it could have eventually definitely became some sort of twisted, equal sort of relationship.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'd be more willing to believe that it didn't start off that way and it ended that way, just because, like you said, 11 years is a long time.
Yeah. And I guess she asked about her daughters or her family in that call, and she says, like, she paid for it later, stating, like, he was abusive towards her, which could or could not be true. I don't know. But yeah, it would be interesting to know all of the evidence that they presented at trial, like, actually knowing every detail or, like, knowing every testimony. Like, back then they didn't have Law and Crime Network that I watch where they play literally the whole court experience, which is really cool, but I don't think they had that back then, so it's not like I can go back and watch. Right. I do know, like, when I was watching the Dateline interview, I was torn between believing her and not believing her.
I can see that for sure. Yeah.
You know, just from
It's
her
tough.
mannerisms and stuff. So
Well, I'd be interested to see like what sort of mental evaluations, if any,
we're
she
done on her.
underwent, because the brain's weird. Like I said, she could have started off under duress and then by the end of it been 100% in love and dedicated to him.
Yeah, the brain is weird. I mean, and so is brainwashing. People could.
Yeah.
She could have been brainwashed. I just thought it was interesting because I was like, well, if she also risked everything in the name of love, isn't love grand?
Sure.
But I don't understand it, I guess. It's just interesting to me because I don't get it, because I would never, I mean, she had 2 girls, right? I would never give my children up for anyone or anything. So it's just weird.
Yeah.
That's all, you know?
There's that song, and now that I'm thinking of it, I can't remember how it goes. But it's like,
I'm in love with the criminal.
no. Is that a real song?
It's a Britney Spears song where she's like, Mama, I'm in love with the criminal.
I don't know that one. But it's something to the effect of like, if I went to jail, would you, like, if I went to jail,
yes,
help me. How does that go?
If I went to jail, would you, I don't know, basically it's like
be there
asking,
tomorrow.
yes, if you would
I
still
gotta
love
look it
me.
up.
But my
Oh
answer is gonna be no. I'm just
yeah, right?
What about that is it
There's
Backstreet Boys.
there's
the one where it's like, I don't care who you are, where you're from, don't care what is it? Did as long as you love me. Nova thinks that song is really inappropriate.
It is, because you should care about all of those things.
She looked at me and said, they could be murderers and you're singing this song.
So the first song that came up was Locked Away, Rock City, and the lyrics are, if I got locked away and we lost it all today, would you honestly still love me the same?
I've heard that one.
The answer to that is
no.
No.
If Ryan called me from jail and was like, hey, I was arrested, do you still love me? I'd be like, bye. I'm just kidding. It depends.
I'd be
on
like,
what
what'd you get arrested for? Yeah. And then that's when they go, it doesn't matter as long as you love me.
That's when I sing, I don't care who you are, where you're from, don't care what you do, as long as you love me.
It's definitely did, which I feel like of those 3 things,
that one's
the one you should care about.
Anyway, that is the story of the Whites, who are not related but are married but not married, and Bobby and Randolph Dial.
Don't fall in love with murderers.
Jess, I don't care what you've done. I will love you forever.
I do care, though. Don't kill anybody. I can't reciprocate your feelings if you've killed somebody.
If you or someone you know thinks they're in a domestic violence situation, please visit the Domestic Violence Support page or call 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. You can also text the word START to 88788. And if you or someone you know is in distress and feels like they can't go on, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or visit the Suicide Prevention website. Thank you for listening. Additional information for each case can be found on our website, truthliesandalibis.buzzsprout.com. New episodes will be uploaded every Monday. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Truth Lies and Alibis.